very warm welcome to everyone. I hope you had a break, with the tea and the coffee. I'll just quickly introduce our esteemed guests, and we've had a fantastic roundtable a little while ago, some very interesting perspectives, and I'm hoping to bring some of that thinking and perspective to the larger audience here. So first of all, Mr. Nandakumar Thirumalai, who's the CFO for Tata Chemicals, and then we have Tanushree, who's CFO for Laxmi Organics. You have Mr. Yogesh Patel, who is the CFO for Mahindra Logistics, and then Nitin Khanna for Inorbit Malls. So thank you very much, and looking forward to this conversation. I've kind of prepared a few questions, which I hope is interesting, but it will be open to the audience once we finish the conversation and the panel today. So Nandakumar, if that's okay with you, I'd like to ask you the very first question. So the question today is, a lot of the clients I've been talking to, or people even in today's discussions, we had like, how do we invest in the right space, right? How do we invest in the right areas? Is it technology? Is it data? Is it people? But investment is always a tricky thing, right? You already have invested a lot. So how do you ensure upgrading what you have currently operationally? And how do you change that digitally to actually include things like labor, or whether it is technology or e-commerce? Where are you focusing on today in your organization to bring about that change?
Sure. Thank you, Lakshmi. See, if you look at, I think in terms of the change in digital part, the first thing is the here and now. So I think as CFOs, my job is to ensure that my team, the finance team across the world, we have operations in the US, Europe, Africa, and Asia, and India. And therefore, the here and now is most critical in terms of ensuring that they spend less time on drudgery. So can we help the finance team to, by automation, by such means by which they can start using the time more effectively than spending time on data creation? That's the first thing which we can help them. Second, in terms of, since we have a lot of data available in terms of all data, therefore can we use data better? Therefore, can finance team using digital means give insights to the business based upon data? So therefore, I think we can look at data much better, I would say, than most other peers in here. And therefore, we have the knack of looking at data in a different way. And therefore, can use technology to give very useful dashboards to the other, let's say in our case, all the peers, the MDs, and all the other functional heads, such dashboards which they can use and use it for the business being taken forward. In terms of the automation part is one more thing where I would talk about how you can deploy the RPAs and bots very effectively. I can talk about example, let's say in Titan, I used to work before chemicals. In Titan, we have about so many stores across the world, across the country, and 2,000 stores with customers paying through cash, through Paytm, through hundreds of means. Reconciling the whole task in terms of the payment coming in and the SAP was a humongous task. So automating that gave so much of confidence to the auditors in terms of our numbers being correct. Otherwise, it was a humongous task and prone to error. So therefore, using bot, we did that in Titan. And today, it's all happening within half an hour's time. Every morning, the entire collection is accounted for and reconciled to the last pi. So like that, we can bring a lot of change to the way we do things. I think we're using data, automation, RPA, we can really change the way we do things here. In Tata Chemicals, apart from finance using digital, we also have a lot of activity happening in terms of the ESG space. For example, we have a digital twin. So let's say in our factory, which is near Okha port in Western India, we have a very large factory with a number of machines. So using a digital twin, we're trying to maximize or ensure we have the most efficient machines, or take out the most efficient parameters and apply it to all the machines. Like that, there are a number of things happening. Just examples have been given here.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Nandakumar. Very exciting. I mean, it's quite interesting to see how you are leveraging what you currently have and automating some of that to bring those efficiencies, right? So even in the previous roundtable, so Tanushree, I'd like to ask you the next question. We spoke a lot about efficiencies. There was a lot of focus around workforce and workforce agility and skills and upskilling. So I'd like to get your perspective on how important is having people and workforce and skill management, updating that, bringing in some of the automation, even in learning, and how do you see that shaping the future?
Lakshmi, that's a very, very interesting question, right? Because I think all of us sitting here appreciate how technology can actually not only help us make decisions faster, but change, the world that we operate in. Having said that, I think my experience has been not just here in Lakshmi, but even in my previous organizations, that there are two derailers to actually deploying technology. One, and both of them are a part of the people set, right? One is the older set of people who have all the knowledge, but who are not technology savvy, and so are scared of technology, right? And the second set actually is those who tend to be in cross-functional teams and are scared about the transparency that technology brings about. So I think when we start talking about automation, no project actually can be successful without people being aligned, and so much more so for digital transformation or automation. And I just want to sort of at that point say that, the approach that I think has worked extremely well is taking the low-hanging fruits where people can actually see quick wins and where they can see how automation and technology is helping them better. And I'll actually take a small example. So in one of my previous roles, we constantly used to have this battle between supply chain, production, planning, and sales because they were unable to meet customer orders because inventory was always running short. We don't have very good WMSs in India today, right? So we said, okay, we have to deploy a WMS, but that's a midterm strategy. What can we do immediately? So we took all stakeholders on board and we developed a very quick dashboard which every Wednesday published a warehouse-wise list of critical SKUs. Now that list actually went on an email and an SMS to everybody who was responsible for that SKU, right from supply chain to sales. What that did was it gave everybody ample visibility. This was every Wednesday. So every Thursday by noon, the planning team then had to actually fill in how would they remediate this shortfall. What this did was everybody was on the same page. Everybody had the same data. People's pain points started to be noticed. Within 2.5 months, we actually reduced the number of critical SKUs by a third, right? And I think when people saw this change coming in, they actually were very enthused, and we actually then went to the extreme level of where we tried putting IoT in our plants to be able to measure production. The teams actually gave it their best, but we're talking about skilling, manpower, etc., right? And I think this is where even vendor partners come into play. This IoT project actually failed because yes, I acknowledge that companies need to own up that garbage in is garbage out. In this particular case, the teams actually gave it their best, but the vendor partner was trying to force-fit a solution for a continuous manufacturing on a batch manufacturing unit. So the technology would never succeed, right? But I think to just summarize what I'm saying is, I think bringing people on board, explaining to them that technology is not competition to their job, or it's not a threat to them, but it will actually help them deliver better, use their time more efficiently, and then implementing the quick wins first brings them on board, and then we can go on the more complex journeys.
Well, thank you, Tanushree. And I think I took two key takeaways from that. One is the engagement of the workforce. But when we talk about automation, we're not looking at simply, everyone talks about AI and machine learning. There is automation even in really small, really critical processes, which could be fairly simple. It's about the right now and right here, what's important to be getting done. And this is where some of the work where, it's a combination of finding the low-hanging fruits, as you mentioned, the actual value, where do you find that? Plus combining it with technology and people, right? So it's all people, process, technology. So thank you for that. Yogesh, a slight extension to that question over there. Now, I recently moved to India after 20 years, and what amazed me the most was about the amount of digitization that India has really gone leaps and bounds far behind some of our competition in other countries. What I'd really like to understand from you is, India is one of the key countries, probably one of the top countries who's adopting digitization very, very fast. What digital solutions or digital tools do you think, or in your organization, are actually helping you build some of the resilience in the organization?
Sure, thanks, Lakshmi, and thanks for your comment on India's readiness and leading the digital wave adoption. So from our perspective as a 3PL supply chain company, tech is kind of an enabler for us as much as it's for our customers. I mean, I guess the previous comment was about how a customer set of ours would look like in terms of adopting technology and the benefits they would drive. So what we did, in fact, is first, kind of broke down the IT landscape of ours into what we call a core. So we call it nucleus, and these systems would be kind of fixed for pan-India, pan-company operations. So these would include, the financial systems, the HRMS, which would be like bedrock of consistent processes, consistent methodologies, what we drive. On top of it is the next layer, which are kind of business systems. Business systems, I mean, WMS is one of them, obviously, and the larger piece, obviously, is TMS or a transport management system. Multiple products exist in both of them. Just having those products for us, for our own use, is not enough in our line of business. We need to make sure that our systems are compatible to what customers use. So their inherent systems in which they do their procurement or sales order processing has to get integrated with the WMS, which we would deploy as we would manage their inventory as well as fulfillment of orders. So how would you link those two? I mean, which systems would you put as your standard stack? And even if it's not your standard stack, how you would have connectors ready? So, I mean, the whole API-led integration, I guess that became, quite a bit of a way you do handshake across systems. Then comes obviously features, I mean, which probably like IoT, etc., kind of got spoken about. I mean, each of them is relevant. I mean, some of them are relevant from tracking SLAs. Some of them are relevant from tracking depths. I mean, your damages, pilferages, delays, on-time deliveries, order fulfillments, inventory tracking solutions. So each of them go in, and then comes the efficiency layer, which is, probably Nandikumar spoke of in terms of how bots would do it, or RPA, kind of plays a role there. Wherein, I mean, we do almost like 30,000 trip deployment a month, and in which case the freight rate updation becomes a critical aspect for us. How would this bots would actually go ahead and update those masters in real time, so that when a particular trip is gets initiated at the right time? How does a trip initiated feedback itself into the procurement channel of ours, so that whatever we have kind of bought is done at the most efficient manner? So that's how we kind of have gone about it. A core nucleus, bedrock, standard, stable, business-aligned systems, and then the functionalities on top of it. All of them kind of having a handshake or a connectors built in with our customers.
Thank you, Yogesh. That was very insightful. And I think it's one of the key, again, takeaway from that was around the whole integrated ecosystem, right? Because there's no one single technology that works by itself. To ensuring that automation works in the right place, but integrating it with whether it's your partner's network or your supplier network becomes quite critical, because even though you have data, the transparency of the data and having it across a network becomes fundamental. So thank you very much for that. So Nitin, one question to you now, just taking that again a little advanced now. I know I didn't ask the very typical CFO question, so I'm going to put that to you. So how are you in your organization as a CFO, what's the kind of digital finance strategy you're adopting? And when I say digital finance strategy, typically when you ask a CFO, it's all about cost cutting, right? It's about, how do I reduce my budgets, or how do I get more from my investment again? So when I talk about a journey, how do you make your journey better, faster, but with making your organization a less expensive finance organization?
So I think as a CFOs, we have been, there's a perception that CFOs always look at cost cutting. I think we have already overcome. Yeah. So I think the first thing is, and I'll just give you my background. I'm from a mall business. It's a retail and real estate, a part of K. Raheja Group. It's a family-owned business, but 4 of our business are actually listed right now, and we are in the process of getting listed. So, talking specifically from the mall business, I think the first part is the acceptance. COVID has actually thrown certain opportunities on us, and I think many of our family offices, including Indian businesses, who were actually on the fence, sitting on the fence, that whether we should invest big time in the technology or not. I think now they have already accepted the fact. So the first thing is the acceptance of the fact that we have to really invest. Now, coming back to your question, looking at the digital finance strategy, I think I'll kind of bucket it into two parts. One is purely looking from a finance perspective. Let me wear my CFO hat over there, and I'll just add to what my co-panelists just said, that from a basic ERP integrated function to using bot and RP, I think we have transitioned to that place. So I think most of us have learned how, we are graduating towards the next step, which is we use bots, we are using RPAs. Now next, what's next? Are we, so for me, the next challenge is, can I predict for next 3 years, what should be my budgets? Looking at the CapEx projects, what should be my cost for next 3 years, looking at the steel prices? So those are the things which the finance community have started, asking. Those are the questions, and that's the area where, I want my team to focus on. So from digital strategy, purely from finance, I want to make life easier for my finance community. There has been a constant challenge to all the entire finance community. How can you close books on the first day of the month? Though I don't know, frankly, if you ask me, if I close on the fourth day, if I close on the first day, I would still recommend, let's close on the fourth day, let's do proper accounting. You can see many of the, newspapers, including ET, might be, sharing some of the story. I would still say that, hey, my friends, wait for 3-4 days, do proper accounting, sit with the auditor, understand, and thresh out your, differences, disconnects, and maybe take 2-3 more days and convince your board that we can close books a little, later on. But yeah, that's a challenge, and that's a part of the finance strategy, where we want to ease off life for our finance team, and want them to focus on something which is more strategic, where they can work closely with the business. I think first part was, the CFOs. We have been told that we were accountants. Now we have been working closely with the business, but now we are working with the business now. So there has been, 3-step change, in the roles, specifically for the finance community. So that's my base for formulating what should be my digital finance strategy, specifically from a finance perspective. And I don't look at my return on investment and how much headcount I'm reducing. I'm purely looking from an efficiency perspective. Now let's look at the second bucket, which is more from a business perspective. I'm sure, if I ask people to raise their hands, how many of us might have visited malls in last 1 week? I think 80% would have definitely visited on a weekend. Now, that's a place where we, for an entertainment for us right now. Looking at, what options you have in a city or urban life. Now there I want to ease off my, consumer entire cycles, which is, entering, how I can enter a mall faster. Without waiting for somebody to frisk and, wait to push something to get a parking slip. How can I just quickly move in? So I'm using FASTags. You can directly, go in and come out. FASTag directly gets charged. Thanks to our, technology which the government of India is actually propagating on. Second is, while we were looking at during COVID, there were big challenges on how can you trace how many people are there in the mall. It was a big challenge. And, sometimes the necessity is again the mother of all invention. And we found somebody who was using face recognition technology through which we were able to identify who is not wearing a mask. Because the technology was not able to identify whether it's a male or female. So, that's again, the business side of tech which we are kind of investing a lot in. So some has come through compliance, some has come through necessity, and third is the objective where we want consumers, everybody who is coming to the mall, should have ease of coming in and going out, whichever brand they want to go in, and how faster they can come out without even standing in the queue for long. So these are few headlines which actually govern my drawing my strategy board. Third is the timeline. Now, I'm not looking at timeline. As a finance guys, we always look at 3 or 5. I don't know why we don't look at 7 years, but those are the 2 years which are very convenient for us. What's my strategy for 3 years or 5 years? So what we are looking at is whether we can build something which is for long term, which is more than 1 year. So that's the underlying timeline. Third is fourth is we don't look at return on investments. We look at how much NPS score is going to increase by this, and that's our target. So any customer who is coming in or coming out of my mall toilet, if he gives me a feedback that he's not happy, then my NPS score is wrong. So that's where my actual investment is going through. So I'm sure after hearing this, at least you will give us some credit as CFOs. We are not only thinking about cost reduction.
No,
So thank you.
completely, Nitin. In fact, a lot of my background is where I've done work with clients and around customer experience. And the NPS scores, like in IBM Consulting, we take NPS scores from all our clients, and we're always nervous, what are they actually going to give us, right? But end of the day, I think customer experience is quite fundamental. Everything we're doing is for them, and if that is not, if that is not really being taken care of, but the tricky part of it is how do you know what the customer experience is? How do you get information on your NPS score? Because there's a whole bunch of data that's there outside. How do we actually manage to get that data into some clever insights, as you mentioned? So, Kumar, my next question is slightly around, around analytics and around data. Now, I've been working with many companies, and so have my colleagues, and all of you are from different organizations. Data is one of the most difficult things to kind of get hold of and actually understand what to do with it. Companies are struggling. Although we talk about data, it's really hard and tedious. The fundamental thing is it's hard and tedious to get that data out, convert it into something which is logical that you can read. So just like to hear your perspectives, how data is evolving and how you're managing your data problems in your company.
Before I answer that, I just add to Nitin in terms of the previous question. The thought just came to me on the mall and how consumers buy at the mall. And so being in Titan earlier, when COVID hit us I think in March 20, that time the biggest task was once the markets reopened on 6th of May 20, how do we sell jewelry without customers walking inside? So the biggest tool was in terms of using digital. In fact, using a lot of tools like WhatsApp calling and video calling and giving the catalogs online. So a new channel came across thanks to digital. Today, customers they were as comfortable to buy a lakh of jewelry just seeing the video than walking. Because once they have the trust in the brand name, then they will buy what is being given. And Tanishq, of course, is a trusted brand name. So like that, I'm saying in terms of that. Also, the whole stock taking. When we had the COVID on 24th of March, peak time for all of us here, and March is year ending, and how do we take stocks? So therefore, we also had some tools deployed, how we can visually check the stocks and give the report based upon this. So therefore, a lot of things happened due to COVID, and the digital helped us, the accountants, fraternity, to really close books on time, sell better, sell in a smarter way, and do all that. So going to your question in terms of data, I think the first task which we are doing is that all the reporting should be touchless, which means that once you have the data of financial in the SAP, and since we have operations worldwide, you do all the consolidation. So from SAP into the MD's iPad, that's how it moves. There's nothing called PPT or Excel. It's all moves seamlessly, and he opens up an app. Therefore, data has to be really used in such a way that is touchless. Whatever is entered in that SAP should be seen on the reporting tool. That's what we've done about a couple of months back on all the reporting. And in fact, today even the board members, audit committee can, if they want, look at the direct numbers from SAP. But of course, we had to upload that 1 week prior, therefore we can't do that. So therefore, that's one used data. Two is that the data itself, if you look at the masters we have in terms of suppliers or this, it has to be cleaned. Because data itself is humongous in SAP and Oracle. But then a lot of effort has to be given one time, maybe every 3 years, to clean that up fully. Otherwise, the data would be junk. Therefore, I think we have to give adequate time to clean the data every 3-4 years' time and purge what is not required. These couple of things is what one should do with data, in my view, in terms of more as here and now, if you ask me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nandakumar. So there's another flip side to data. Okay, so when you look at data, critical for any organization, critical to get insights, but then there is the whole security element to it. So as I was mentioning, I've worked in the UK and the European region for quite some time, and this whole, you have whole bunch of operational measures, you have GDPR compliance. So data is like fundamental. I can't even get names of people I'm going to meet. It's just some random stuff that's given, which is useless for me. So Tanushree, question to you is going to be, although we try to leverage data, and there are multiple risks that any business has, right? Cybersecurity is one of the biggest risks that most of these CFOs are having to deal with. You talk about ransomware, you talk about something else. So I'd like to understand your perspective of what are the top 3 or 4 risks that you are looking at managing in your role as a CFO, and how are you trying to look at some of the security issues of whether it's data related or something else?
So I think I fundamentally believe in this one statement, right? There are only 2 types of companies in the world: those who've been hacked and know it, and those who've been hacked and don't know it. I mean, in my worldview, there's no third type of a company. And I think that's the first risk, which is the most predictable risk element that one tries to protect against, which is anything untoward that you know that can happen will happen at some point or the other, and you cover yourself for that, right? So I think it starts at the very basic level, saying how secure is my network, to build in redundancies in the network, and then to go forward and say, from a cybersecurity point of view, when you build redundancies, you also do DMZ, etc. But then you go one step ahead and you say, data access has to be on a need to know only basis. Everybody cannot have access to the same data. I'll go back a few years. I don't know how many of us remember when one of the largest financial institutions in the country were pulled up because their results were floating on WhatsApp at some point in time, right? And this happened to a couple of large players. I think that happens because we don't educate our people. So I think the second risk that we try and cover for is educating people. And this starts from, again, talking about phishing and whaling, which is so par for course now. And I don't know how many of us in this room have had whaling attacks. I've seen multiple attempts. And I think it's very, very crucial to train and make aware, not just our finance teams, but the users in general about what could happen. And I think while we are doing this, it's also very key to work with somebody who's external. As a mid-cap, it's not our core competence. Security is not our core competency. But today there are a lot of security operations centers that are there that bring in that value add. Because I think what happens is they do these analyses where they track what's on the dark web, right? And I think from a data privacy standpoint, that becomes extremely important to see what data is actually getting thrown into the dark web, if there is anything, so that you can take those preventive measures. I think the third thing, which is the third risk that we sort of are working on, is becoming obsolete, or technology becoming obsolete, right? So I think we are constantly aware that whatever solutions that we are using today may be the best in class, but something else will come up. True. And I think that's where, even in the roundtable we were discussing that a lot of our time, at least 30% to 40% of our time goes saying what 3 years next. Sorry, Nitin, we still think 3 years and 5 years. So, what 3 years next, what 4 years next, and this is from an entire business perspective, and then seeing where technology can come in, where it's not penetrated today. For example, in a chemical manufacturing company, there are certain very, very risky areas in the plant. Today we have IoT. Can I put IoT on the helmets of people to be able to track where they are going to ensure that they are not going into those risky areas, right? So I think then that's the risk that so EHS, ESG, safety, all of these get covered through knowing where technology can be used. And I think that's the third element that we really look at. But to sum it all up, I would once again say that, anybody who believes that their systems are foolproof, I beg to differ. We've heard the largest of names in the country getting ransomware attacks. There's so many more that we've not heard of. And this is one area I think we can't look at an ROI, like Nitin said. We've got to actually now start saying this is an insurance policy for all of us, because what if it happens, the loss is going to be much bigger than the investment.
Thanks, Tanushree. So again, a critical part of cybersecurity, right, when we talk about risks and data is actually making that investment in technology. And I'm a technology person. I've been doing technology for many years, so it'd be a shame if I don't ask you the question, Nitin. I'd really like to go down to the next level of detail, saying within your organization, right, how are you analyzing what technology is best for you? What kind of, let's say, data visualization tools you're looking at? You spoke about predictive analytics to kind of help you make your decision as a CFO a lot more easier every day. But how do you make your organization more digitally ready by using these tools or technology? And how do you actually decide what to go in for?
So yeah, it's a big challenge, frankly, if you ask me. There's so many tools which are available, and with due respect to all the consultants, they do tell us, what are the good things over deck. But the moment you start discussing with them in the next level, probably you will find, areas where they are not at comfort or they are not gelling with the industry like us. Secondly, what happens is there are tools which are available which have come from globe. Many of them have come from, and their biggest challenge is customization in India. We have, thanks to GST, where all the excise, all the taxes have now subsumed. So at least life is still challenging, but at least we are focused on one big challenge. A lot of customization happens in those tools. I think what we have to find, and then I am also in the search of doing that. There are quite a few tools which we have started using it. We're finding it difficult, and then we are again changing it. It's just a trial and error, frankly, if you ask me. So I can give you one big example. So we started using one BI tool where our main objective was to, explain the board in one page, the entire finance for one of the malls. So the finance dashboard, end to end, which starts at, what is my ROI, what is for the month, YTD, collection, DSO, payables, and looking at projects, incident management, everything in on one dashboard. And of course, looking at benchmarking, competition, what is this doing? And it took us almost like 6-7 months to bring that information in one page, and stabilizing it over a period of time, we found that it was very difficult. And some of the softwares, footfalls in one of the malls has a different API. Somebody has not pushed the data here, and then somehow we were struggling. So the next decision which we took was that we need to have one software, and we need to have one software for one activity. And then, as my co-panelist was talking about, how they can talk to each other. If we have 6 or 7 major softwares, how we can integrate that. So that's the learning which we had this in our process. Currently, what we are using in terms of visualization tools, we are using IBM, especially to reduce our entire P2P cycle. Okay. And it gives us a dashboard every morning. We are using FileNet with DataCap, and it gives us a good visualization in the morning that through Power BI. Where are we in terms of how many invoices? We have just formed a captive shared service, so looking at what is the efficiency of that shared services, documentation process in a day, etc., etc. So that's more from a payables perspective. From a business information standpoint, I think there are various softwares which we have integrated right now, and currently we are looking at the entire budgeting process, how we can revolutionize that, and look at the predictive analysis. Okay. And since we are into rental business and we have contracts which are more than for 3 years, 5 years, Titan was part of our, still part of our retail franchisee. And how can we predict for next 3 years, 5 years, what the rentals will be? And looking at the sales for last 3-5 years, okay, for all the retail stores all across India, whether we can predict, what their sales might be, looking at inflation and factoring in the normal price rise. Okay. Whether we can get into it. So that's the next step, which we are looking at. Other than that, small tools for operational efficiency and finance efficiency, we have been, it's all by trial and error, frankly, if you ask me.
Thanks, Nitin. Right, I had one last question, which I think would be unfair if I don't ask as part of the panelists, given all of the focus on it, and we had discussions on ESG. So Yogesh, my final question is going to be to you around sustainability, and I'll leave that question open to the other panelists also. So sustainability is it's an essential element of the bedrock activities for growing revenue or mitigating risks, and also for increasing efficiencies, right? Which is everyone saying what we need to do. I'd really like to understand within your organization, given you're into logistics and that's a big ticket area, what are your top three most priorities that you're looking at around sustainability?
Sure. So we are, I mean, as you rightly said, Lakshmi, I mean, big contributors towards greenhouse gases at that. So not only scope 1 and scope 2, but scope 3 also is kind of, in the realm of what we would want to measure and, help control. So, I mean, first of all the start point is that how do I start by having my universe defined? If I do not know that, how many trips I'm making, what's the category of vehicle I use, what's the age of that vehicle, what's the kind of route somebody is taking, which kind of defines the consumption of fuels and the fuel category itself. Each of them becomes a data point, and all of this data, as much as it is structured, helps you then get into some meaningful analysis and usage. What we have done, in fact, over the year or two last, is not only first went ahead and said that, okay, what we would want to make an impact for as part of our operations, we have said that we'll also help our customers improve the impact which they have on the environment. So today, of all the customers who move their goods through us, they get a monthly report as to what's been their carbon footprint by the tonnage, what they move through us. So it becomes, a report which they voluntarily get. And that's where kind of a conversation starts off in terms of, so this is what it is. Is this good or bad? Or if I want to improve from here, what do I do? And a meaningful conversation starts. So anything for us to make an impact, first we need to start measuring. If you're not going to measure, you're not going to manage. So towards that, our contribution or a kind of start made there is that we've kind of identified top customers. In last 6 months, we've started giving them voluntary reports monthly, that this has been your carbon footprint because you've moved through us. That kind of gives them a view in terms of what it is. And then internally for us, this also brings in a challenge that suppose if I want to make this as a value prop, can I move this with lesser carbon footprint for our customers? And that becomes a sales proposition as well, or a value proposition itself. On the last mile delivery piece, which is kind of, I think, most amenable for alternate fuels, specifically electric, there the adoption of electric itself, we kind of started off saying that, okay, this is how we would move towards adoption, and not only integrate itself as our value prop, but even, customers' value prop itself, that let's do it through us because we can do it green for you. So basically, again, kind of merging the operations, data what we generate from operations, converting into actionable insights, and having dissemination of it is how kind of it's tying up into the ESG.
Thank you, Yogesh. Just in the interest of time, anyone else, any suggestions on sustainability or any other topics before I open it up and summarize?
Just to add to Yogesh, I think the most critical task is how to record and report, because that's now the very important task. If you look at the books of accounts, we have the vouchers to check, whereas in ESG reporting, what do you check? You only have carbon emissions. Therefore, the putting in place a system to record across geographies and report is critical. Yeah. And now with the BRSR having assurance fact coming in, therefore, we need to have adequate data to be auditable. That's a big task for, I think, CFOs to put it in place.
True. Thank you, Nandakumar.
I think I just want to put one point here, and a little digress from ESG. There are a lot of compliances which, it's on the other side of the table. My request is that, there are a lot of compliances which we have to do as CFOs. With data being mingled so freely, and we have been, as Indians, I've also seen that we are not very savvy from a cybersecurity perspective. I think there has to be strong laws, governance from the government side to put more stricter rules in terms of usage of the data, or how the fintechs are behaving, how my data is today data is the most costlier element.
Absolutely.
And if it's my data, if it's been held by any of the the Googles of the world or Facebooks of the world, and they can use it, and then they know more than me about me. So what is the government is doing in this regard? We have been doing ESG compliances, we have been doing CSR compliances, we have been doing GST compliances. There's a Companies Act compliances. So compliances are definitely, we are making sure that we are getting compliant. I think it's now for government to act and put stricter controls over the cybersecurity. And I
Totally.
agree with Tanushree that that's one area where probably we have put our least money on, and where we are most vulnerable in.
True.
Lakshmi, I will add just one thing on the ESG piece, right? We all spoke about technology, and of course, technology can help us measure and do all these wonderful things. I myself spoke about, us using these trackers on helmets to ensure people are not entering areas they're not supposed to enter. But I think fundamentally on ESG, it's got to be driven in our DNA. And I'm actually very, very proud to say that, the under 30s that I work with, they've actually ensured that right from our board to my office is completely paperless. So today, they refuse to do any review with me if I actually have a paper. And today, all our board papers, everything is online. We don't actually print anything.
True. No, I think I'm completely aligned because I have a millennial son also, and he is, he wants to do something great. He's investing money in some forest area in Brazil where he wants to grow forest. Like, to your point, unless, something around ESG or looking at, what's happening on sustainability is within our DNA and we're not passionate about it, we're not able to really able to drive that messaging to the rest of the people we're working with. So with that, I'd just like to conclude. So thank you very much. But a few takeaways from the conversations we've had, which was extremely interesting for me and I hope for the rest of the audience. We spoke a little bit around workforce and the workforce agility and how we need to kind of bring in that change management. We spoke about a collaborated supplier partner network and having that integrated network across to really bring the things to life. We discussed sustainability and what the government is actually doing about it and how it can be improved. And I think the last point was very interesting was around data, right? There is a lot of data, but how do we maximize the data to make your day in a life easier? And how do we maximize the data to help you make the right decisions? With that, I know we've got 3 minutes, so I'd like to open it up to the audience if there's any questions for our esteemed panelists. Is there a mic with you?
Hello everyone. So I have a question. Like in finance function, we are using the technology for two aspects. One is for the some of the tools which use for the advanced analysis or some kind of like BI tools we are using for the for such kind of functionality. The other one is the standard processes that we are implementing for reducing the manual efforts, which makes the functional more effective or the more effective manner. So my question is, in finance function, we are operating the process in a standard way since decades. So should we change the thought of running the finance function from making the users more liberal in way of thinking and spending the money rather than just restricting the processes and automate those processes in the technology? So what is your thought on this?
I'll just take that. I think if you stop spreadsheets, you'll have innovation.
Right. So the thing is, like when we restrict the users from spending or from any of the processes or with the policies, so they will stop thinking beyond those policies and they might not come up with the innovations that they should do. As right now the business is like technology and the advancement is going on in the India. So how we should run this finance function from this aspect?
I think the processes are meant to ease lives. The processes are not meant to make life tougher or create bureaucracy in the system. And if there is a process which is creating those kind of issues, I think it's better to relook at those processes. That's my, little bit two cents here.
Any other questions?
Good afternoon. First of all, thanks to the panelists for a very insightful discussion. And it's very enlightening and satisfying to see the finance leadership talking about technology so much in depth and talking about so many technological terms. My question is, with so many technological changes happening, how the financial leadership, and I know you are busy in your day-to-day work working with the numbers, take the decision, okay, what is the next technological adoption or the experiment has to be done from finance perspective. And just another question similar to this is that lot of acquisitions happens in companies like yours, like Mahindra recently got Revigo's operations. Then the merger of the technologies which are coming from two different businesses and which is like the lot of numbers are being there. What are the challenges which comes in this scenario?
Sure, I guess it gravitates towards me. So I guess firstly, I mean, as finance leaders or kind of stakeholders in the organization itself, I guess times you look at it from both the lenses. You look at it from finance as a subject matter, and you also look at it as a relevance to the organization overall. So any of those decisions which you participate into, deciding would obviously have that lens as well, and the relevance of it would get the merit of it. What happens in terms of simplification and standardization? I guess the earlier question was standardization kind of becoming kind of restrictive. But I would say that the more you are able to standardize or simplify, you are able to kind of lower the skill level required to do that work. And probably it goes more on a green channel easily. That kind of takes away a lot of burden of having oversight, improves the bandwidth for little bit more so-called value-added work, which probably people should and can spend time on. So simplification and standardization, I would say, are actually integral, I would say, values which I would have had looked at before deciding on any tech roadmap or a product roadmap we would have chosen for ourselves. As we do acquisitions, I mean, very important, I mean, very good questions on that it brings in additional challenges of bringing in together everything. So, I mean, specific case of Revigo itself, what we did is, I mean, within the first 50 days of acquiring that company, we actually re-implemented their ERP to our own. So our nuclear system, which I talked of earlier, from 5th of Jan, I mean, we acquired it on 10th of November, and 5th Jan, they actually migrated into our ERP. So sometimes you will have to take a call saying that, okay, I mean, we definitely need this to be at the same standard or, robustness of what we would do, and we would bring that in, and hence remove the duplicacy or multiplicity of the systems.
Just one more point, right, on how do you decide what's the next technology to deploy. I think it's very important that the user function or the business function is a part of that decision making. As far as finance is concerned, I think we can decide that. But when we are looking at an HRMS or a CRMS or even an expense management system, for example, I think that's where the user function actually comes in with more options because they actually are dealing with the pain point day in and day out. So I think having that collaborative approach where you can lay this out in the part of your journey, in the part of your technology transformation journey, along with your business departments is very, very important.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I know we're running over time, so we may not have time for another question, but we're going to be available outside for some more time, so if anyone wants to ask further questions, please feel free. Thank you very much, esteemed panelists, and it was really interesting and very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.